Your phone vibrates. It's them. After weeks or maybe months of silence, that old pull wakes up again. Your chest tightens. Your mind starts racing. That swirl of curiosity, hope, and nervousness isn't weakness. It's the trap being quietly placed in front of you. Before you panic, before you type anything, pause. This is not some casual check-in. This is a test, a tactic. And if you react the wrong way, you hand them power they never earned. If you're exhausted from being toyed with, stop for a moment, breathe deeply, and decide whether this is worth giving your energy to. Comment boundaries. If you're ready to reclaim control and never let someone's toxic behavior dictate your peace again, then understand this. When your phone suddenly lights up with a message from someone who vanished for days, weeks, or even months, it hits your nervous system like an electrical current. That moment is not small. It's not casual. It's far from harmless. IT is a psychological shock that taps into the entire emotional history you have with this person, the conditioning they've created in you, and the unresolved tension that still sits in your body. That first second when their name appears is exactly where their influence used to live. The shock, the confusion, the tiny flicker of hope, the pressure in your chest. These reactions aren't random. They are the result of repetitive cycles that taught you to stay alert, stay waiting, stay ready for the next unpredictable shift. Silence combined with sudden contact is one of the strongest manipulation patterns because it shakes your sense of emotional stability. The moment the message arrives, your mind starts searching for meaning. Why now? What do they want? Did they miss me? Are they coming back? Should I answer? These questions rise instantly because intermittent reinforcement creates a loop that keeps you tied to uncertainty. Narcissists take full advantage of this exact moment. They rely on the shock to blur your judgment just long enough to slip back into your emotional world. The hunger for closure, the desire for answers, and the fantasy of reconciliation all rush back because silence never just removes someone. It creates emptiness, and your brain hates emptiness. This is why the first seconds after their message are more important than the message itself. That's where your emotional reflex kicks in before your logical mind catches up. The urge to respond, to resolve, to clarify, or defend yourself feels almost physical. That is the effect of being conditioned to react to scarcity. They disappear, they suddenly reappear, and your body responds before your mind has time to think. So when that message arrives, the shock isn't simply surprise. It is the reopening of a wound you didn't close, the activation of a pattern you never agreed to, and the reminder of a dynamic that once had power over your entire nervous system. Before you even consider typing a response to that unexpected message, it's crucial to understand what is truly happening. That text isn't a friendly check-in. It is a calculated probe meant to test your limits, observe your reactions, and possibly step back into your emotional world. The reason it feels urgent or tempting to answer is because it's meant to trigger you. Intermittent silence followed by sudden contact is a classic psychological move, and it works because it exploits the human need for closure and certainty. You feel drawn to respond because your nervous system interprets the message as a sign that something important is happening, and that is the exact effect they want. When someone breaks silence without warning, they're extending an invisible hand to see if you'll take it. It's not about reconnection. It's about dominance. Your emotional reactions are being monitored, even if subconsciously, and carefully triggered to spark urgency, guilt, or longing. You may feel the urge to justify your feelings, explain your actions, or even excuse their disappearance. These impulses are exactly the buttons they want to push. The more reactive you are, the more influence they gain. That's why you must step back and separate the content of the message from the intention behind it. The words might look simple or innocent, but the context, the silence, the inconsistency, the unpredictability is what gives it power. Understanding this is the first step toward taking back control. By naming the strategy being used on you, you strip away much of its effectiveness. Recognize that the message is a boundary test, not a gesture of care. The urgency you feel is artificial, and your responsibility is not to react emotionally, but to choose consciously. Your power lies in observing the message without automatically falling into the old reflex to engage without over-explaining, and without letting the emotional storm inside you dictate your next move. This awareness helps you respond from clarity, not reflex. And that is the foundation of any strategy that protects your peace. Narcissists love intermittent contact because it creates constant uncertainty and emotional chaos for the receiver. In healthy relationships, expectations and boundaries are clear, but intermittent contact creates a psychological cycle that keeps you emotionally hooked even when you know the relationship is damaging. Their sudden reappearance after silence is not random. It is part of a pattern designed to provoke emotional reactions and maintain subtle control over your state of mind. By keeping you wondering about their motives, they keep a hold on you without direct effort. Control is not just about words. It's about the emotional response they spark inside you. This pattern works because humans are wired to seek consistency. When someone disappears without explanation, it leaves a psychological gap. When they suddenly return, your brain sees it as a chance to resolve the tension, to fill in the missing pieces, and to regain balance. That emotional pull is exactly what they count on. It activates hope, anxiety, guilt, or longing, emotions that are powerful enough to override logic, even when you know their past behavior. The suddenness of contact lights up deeply conditioned attachment pathways, making self-control incredibly hard. Their unpredictable silence and return also function as a boundary test. By reappearing unexpectedly, they're essentially asking, will you respond? Will you react? Will you let me in again? Every emotional reaction you have, whether excitement or fear, reveals how much power they still hold. That's why awareness is critical. Observing your emotional reaction without acting on it weakens their tactic. Recognizing manipulation shifts you from being a player in their game to an observer with control. It reframes the text from an emergency to a psychological test that you can choose to respond to intentionally. By understanding how intermittent contact works, you protect your emotional energy and avoid walking into a trap designed long before this message appeared. When a narcissist breaks silence, the first and most vital step is recognizing your emotional reaction. The feelings that come up, fear, longing, guilt, anger, or a brief flicker of hope, are not random. These are the exact emotions the narcissist is trying to stir. Your emotional response is the lever they use to pull you back. These feelings are intense because they are layered with history, with manipulation patterns, and with the bond your nervous system formed over time. It's easy to mistake these reactions for genuine connection, but they're often amplified responses to a strategically timed trigger. Understanding your reaction begins with awareness. Notice your body sensations, the tight chest, the stomach drop, the rush of thoughts pushing you to reply. These signals show that a familiar pattern has been activated. Recognizing them allows you to separate your emotions from their intention. You begin to see that the anxiety or longing you feel is not about real connection, but about a well-timed disruption. By naming your emotions without judging them, you reclaim part of the power they depend on. When you acknowledge fear as fear and guilt as guilt, you weaken the illusion that these feelings should dictate your behavior. You create space for choice. Emotional awareness also helps you identify manipulation in their words, whether it's guilt-tripping, charm, or subtle pressure. The more clearly you understand your reactions, the less control they have. In essence, resisting manipulation starts with recognizing and owning your emotions, using them as insight instead of instructions, and creating room for choices grounded in intention rather than automatic responses. After you've identified your emotional response, the next step is creating a strategy that protects your boundaries. The brutal reply is not about cruelty. It's about clarity and control. It is responding from strength, not emotion. Its purpose is to make sure you determine the direction of the interaction, not them. This kind of reply requires understanding your boundaries and recognizing the tactics they use. It's an act of reclaiming control over your attention. The brutal reply works on multiple levels. First, it shows that you see the manipulation, which instantly weakens their influence. When they realize their usual triggers no longer provoke the expected reaction, they lose leverage. Second, it sets a firm boundary. By replying in a straightforward, emotionally neutral way, You show that your peace is not up for negotiation. You communicate that you're done participating in their cycles. This requires discipline. It may mean waiting before responding, rehearsing the message, or choosing silence altogether. The key is avoiding the emotional reaction they want. The brutal reply is simple, calm, unbothered. No explanations, no apologies, no long paragraphs. These are the traps they rely on to pull you back in. Ultimately, the brutal reply is a form of psychological protection. It shields your energy, keeps your boundaries intact, and prevents old patterns from restarting. It shows strength without aggression, peace without justification, and finality without hostility. By mastering this, you turn a triggering moment into a moment of power. Keeping control of the narrative is essential when a narcissist contacts you after silence. This isn't about controlling them, it's about controlling yourself and the emotional space you hold. When they message you, they're trying to pull you into their frame, where they set the tone. Their aim is to guide the interaction toward guilt, emotional reactions, or re-entry into the dynamic they once controlled. If you respond without intention, you give them the reins of your emotional world. Keeping the narrative in your hands means you choose how things unfold. The first step is defining your purpose before engaging. Ask yourself, why am I responding? If I respond at all, am I seeking closure, setting a boundary, protecting my peace? Once you set your intention, you prevent them from steering the interaction. A controlled narrative requires emotional awareness and the ability to pause. This gives you space to decide whether the interaction aligns with your values. Consistency is also key. Once you set your rules for engagement, stick to them. Narcissists constantly test boundaries to see how much sway they still have. Consistent, neutral responses, or silence, show that you are no longer susceptible. By keeping control of the narrative, the focus shifts from their wants to your well-being. This is how you protect your peace and reclaim emotional authority. Anticipating their moves is another essential strategy. Once you understand their message isn't innocent, you can begin to predict their next steps. Narcissists escalate when their usual tactics stop working. They may increase messaging, apply guilt, use charm, triangulate with others, or push emotional pressure. Predicting this helps you stay grounded instead of caught off guard. Their power lies in unpredictability. By anticipating their behavior, you remove the shock factor. Preparation allows you to respond calmly and maintain your boundaries. You can rehearse possible scenarios, imagine different messages, and plan responses that protect your energy. This rehearsal strengthens your emotional resilience. It also makes manipulation easier to spot in real time. Anticipation gives you power. You shift from reacting blindly to observing and choosing intentionally. Recognizing the need for a pause, a moment to center yourself before responding, is a powerful act of self-protection. This pause is not for them, it's for you. When they reach out unexpectedly, your instinct is to react immediately. A conscious pause interrupts that reflex and brings you back to yourself. By asking, "Is my energy worth giving away right now?" you create a moment of clarity. This pause can be taking a breath, grounding yourself, journaling your feelings, or reminding yourself of your boundaries. It's a reset point that restores your agency. This pause also builds accountability within yourself. It reminds you that you are not obligated to respond quickly or emotionally. Over time, this practice builds resilience. The more you pause, the less power their tactics have. Eventually, your peace becomes untouchable, and any sudden contact from them becomes just another moment you control.